Hi everyone, this is James from F9 Audio and the Freemasons, and I'm proud to present what I believe is another first from F9 Audio. One of the most common questions I've been asked by producers ever since we set F9 up is, can I see inside your workflow? How are you getting your sonic results, and can I do the same without buying a whole series of external plugins? For the last 6 months, we've been working on a way to deliver exactly what people are asking for, and we think we've now got it with this new TRAX range. So what do you get? Well, let me show you. We're going to concentrate on one DAW at a time, and every one of the 5 projects inside this classic house TRAX release is a fully functioning Logic Pro arrangement page. It's compatible with Logic 9.1.8 and all versions of Logic X. If you don't use Logic but you do like what you're hearing in the demos, there is a WAV pack available containing all the music, effects and a great series of drum stems. So let's dive straight in and open one of these pages up. The idea of TRAX is to deliver 3 things: first-class soundware, multi-sampled patches from classic hardware units, and production knowledge. We're hoping this is going to be a perfect way to deliver tricks and techniques directly to your own DAW environment. So this is one of the projects inside the pack called Left Bank, and it was one of my favourites to put together. It's my homage to the traditional and brilliant French house sound. So as you can hear there, this isn't a template in any way, shape or form. It's a fully functioning DAW page. If any of you have seen the recent series of point blank videos that were shot here at F9, you'll know we've got an SP1200 in the building at the moment. And nearly all of the drums from this pack have been sampled into an SP1200, pumped back out through the hardware, and are available as a series of menus. Here's the kicks menu that's been used in this project. So you've got more than is actually used in the track here. Here's a snare menu. Here's some additional snares that have been pushed very wide by using the sample delay plugin. And as I say, this is part of the beauty of all of this. You can see all of the tricks that I might use just using Logic's internal plugins directly from using this page. So let me just solo a selection of the drums here so you can hear the drum track now in action. And as you can hear there, you've got a perfect starting point, even if you want to scrap all of the music and actually just work on the rhythm track or work from the rhythm track here. So I'm using 2 basses in the track. One is a traditional synth bass from one of the analogs in the studio, multi-sampled, and the other one is a formant style bass. Now you can see, just to prove that this is running completely live, these are the actual notes. Let's solo it and play through. And this is actually doubled later on by the formant bass sound, which I'm just going to play direct from the keyboard so you can hear what we've got. And you hear them together. And if you ever wondered how these kind of bass lines are actually put together, you can always just dive straight into the MIDI and check some of the notes I'm using. And just before the comments on this YouTube video descend into utter chaos as normal, along the lines of how dare you rip off Daft Punk, let me play you a couple of things. This is Around the World by Daft Punk. This is Another One Bites the Dust by Queen. And this is the track that originated all of these bass lines. This is Good Times by Chic. But the point I'm trying to make is quite important, and it comes after years of experience. Some of the most important pieces of music that you know and love will have been directly influenced by other recordings. It's all part of the grand carousel of the music industry, and it's what keeps on pushing music forward. Okay, now back to the fun stuff. The bubbly riff that runs across the top of this record is multi-sampled out of a JX10. Here's the patch. Now, one thing that we found when we were building the multi-sampled instruments, actually sampling them in the context of a track made us go a little bit heavier with the external processing from the hardware. And as a result, these patches are just so playable as they work. So it's been a really good lesson. But one thing that has never ceased to amaze me whilst we were making this is just how good some of the internal instruments and plugins are inside of Logic. For example, here's the clav that's doing this brilliant part later on in the track. I'll just solo. Now, as this is a fully mixed project, you have full access to all of the plugin chains that I'm using to get the sounds. So turn a few of them on and off, see exactly what I'm doing and why I'm using certain things to widen things up, get things fatter, control some of the dynamics, control some of the sonics. And if you like the sound of any particular one, don't forget to save the channel strip setting off into your own library. Now let's look at the mixer. I've color-coded everything so all the drums are one color, effects the next, bass another one, keys, etc, etc, etc. So it's easy to see where you're going. Now, only on a few occasions have I used groups because some people haven't quite got their head around groups yet, and it's particularly on these stereo instruments where you need to bring them down as an actual pair. I've done a little bit of subgrouping on a few tracks. There's not much on here, but there are some auxiliary sends that you might find useful to see how I'm actually using it. There's actually a reverb or a small ambience on the bass. We've also got some custom impulse responses throughout this entire pack that just kind of start to add just the right amount of ambience here and there. So check out how I'm using them as well. But one thing I really want to draw your attention to is look at the fader levels. You'll notice that none of these are pulled down to ridiculous values like -20 that I see so often in people's Logic productions. It's very easy as things start to get hot in a mix to actually overprocess things and then start building up large gains within the plugin chain and then to have to pull your fader down to compensate. It is completely the worst thing that you can do. Let me show you something. I'm just going to level this fader up at 0 and then I'm going to drop it by -6. Now look at that movement. That is quite a way, but if I go all the way down to here, say at -30, and now I type in -24, look at another 6 dB difference. It's minute. The most important part of a fader is always around the 0 position. It's just how the mathematics and the logarithmic scales of faders work. So when you're working away, it's always good to use a gain structure that will allow you to have the faders as close to 0 as humanly possible. Now that's not always the case, and it's almost impossible to do completely whilst you're working. And you'll see here I've got some things down at say -8 or -10, and that's just standard as you're working through a balance. But if you can get into a habit of working in the way that I've shown you here, of actually having your faders around 0, I promise you'll find mixing so much easier. Because let's face it, doing a few dBs with a fader here within automation will make a massive difference. Whereas if it's all the way down here, 1 dB is almost pixels and it's pointless. You cannot mix effectively at those kind of levels. So this is one bit of knowledge that I'm really hoping to bring across to everyone working in Logic, is to get your gain structures right. So this is the second project that I quickly want to take you through. Now we've tried a different rhythm track approach on each individual project, and here we're using Ultrabeat to re-trigger a kit of 909 samples that have been passed through the SP1200. I'm just going to solo the drums now so you can have a good listen. But for me, the star of the show is this Detroit-style stab we've got of a minor chord sampled from a Prophet 6. Now, I've actually got multiple versions of the same patch set up in this project, and for different reasons. One thing that we can all agree on is on a breakdown you can get away with a little bit more bass from your principal instruments. So here's a version of the stab riff without much bass rolled off. And once we put the drums in, I've rolled more of the bass end off to actually allow the sound to fit. Running completely in parallel to both of these patches is a third copy playing exactly the same notes, but passed through some very short delays with some feedback and some ambience and mixed to 100% wet. Now this allows me to automate this particular channel up and down, and listen to the results. And working like this is a great way to add some interest into your track, but because we're adding the delay on top of it, so let me show you what I mean here. This delay is set to be completely wet. It's 100% wet here. Whilst we're adding that up, we're not taking away from the original sound. And if you think about moving a wet or dry mix, as you turn it wet, you're actually losing the dry signal, so the sound becomes less powerful. By doubling up your tracks, adding a completely wet version and then automating them up and down, you can keep the power of the actual original sound, but add some real interest into your tracks by automating this wet version up and then suddenly slamming it down, as you can see here on the screen. Piano, as you can see, it's running completely live as MIDI. There's the proof. Let me just solo what we got. Now, house pianos always have to bite. They have to be unsubtle. They just have to hit you around the head like a breeze block. And we've created a patch here that has no multi-layering. It was from some of the actual recordings taken in the Forte sessions, and it slams home. You'll hear a background hisser that's coming from the bit crusher, and you can see I've got quite a chain of effects on here to get it to cut through on this mix. Now, if you want this exact sound in any of your other productions, don't forget to come up here to the settings menu and select Save Channel Strip Settings As. If you've installed the EXS content as directed within the instructions in the pack, you'll always have these sounds available. Now, the thing about all of the equipment that was used back in the early days of house, and we're talking end of the 80s, the beginning of the 90s, is that the sampling technology was incredibly low bit. And these are a selection of patches of 8-bit strings. Now, you'll see I'm using the same technique as we used in the previous project to actually push them into stereo. So one is slightly detuned against the other. So there's two versions of the same patch. But yet again, we've dug deep and found you exactly the right sounds for building a classic house production. Now, there's one great trick here at the bottom of the page. Did you know that you can use Ultra Beat as an auto gate? Now, I've got a trigger sample here. It's called O for Gate, and it's a little vocal loop. And let me play you back the original ungated version using the sample editor. But within the context of our mix, I've got this routed to bus 2. And underneath it, I've got an Ultra Gate. Now, bus 2 is actually turned off so that you can't actually hear it. So if I solo bus 2, for example, you can see that the audio's there, but you're not hearing it. That's because it's set to no output here on its actual output selection. But that bus is being picked up by a version of Ultra Beat. So here on the sidechain selection, I've got bus 2, which is our vocal loop. And now I'm using that sidechain as an actual sound source within Ultra Beat. And I've got a very simple pattern with a 16-note trigger on. And then I'm just automating certain parameters of the actual envelope. So this is Black Widow, one of the other pages within the pack. I'm using a traditional sidechain method here. I've got a kick loop that's just an audio loop, and I've set its output here to no output, so it's not going anywhere near any of the buses or the stereo routing, but I can pick that up at any point using a compressor and sidechain any elements that I want to it. Now you might have heard a really fizzy version of low bit distortion going on in the background, and let me just solo the 2 drum loops that are playing here. We've got them to fizz away like that by using Otto's brilliant Biscuit hardware unit, which is a bit reduction circuit that is fed directly into an analog filter that you can drive as well. So you can hear them in action. Let's solo all the drums again, and also let's see exactly what a great starting point this particular page might be for your own productions. For years, people have been asking me how we got some of the more disco-orientated bass lines on the Freemasons records, and it's because I play a bit of bass and we've got a Fender Jazz bass here. Now, inside this pack, we've got a multi-sampled ESX24 patch of that guitar, but please bear in mind, this is not subtle, this is not delicate, this is designed to smash home within the context of a club record. So consistency and power are what we're looking for between the notes here. But to get it to really sound live, let me just solo the whole bass part we got here. We created a menu patch of grace notes, bass pulls, bass plucks, bass hits, bass slides that you can use against the actual main chromatic patch to really bring a new level of authenticity into your programming. Because we're using a mixture of sampled instruments and MIDI, it's utterly simple to start adding your own bass lines. Let me just trim that down and we should be able to loop that straight up. Now, whilst we're on this page, one quick note about drum programming. As most of the drum parts in this pack are running actually as live MIDI using virtual instruments, you'll be able to see my entire quantization plot. The MPC grooves and machine grooves are available completely natively within all of these projects, and they're used heavily. But also check out the quantization values that I've applied to the actual MIDI parts here. You'll see that I've swung certain bits heavier than others. So dig right in and investigate why this works. I promise you it will make your rhythm programming much better. This is Madagascar, another one of the projects, and I'm going to zip through this one because this video is starting to get quite long now. But let me quickly show you, this is one of the crunchiest and fattest drum parts that we've done throughout the pack. And as always, it's there for you to completely pick apart and see how I've done things, change as much as you like, and build up your own rhythms. But let me quickly play you some of the patches. This is the bass sound. Now, this has been carefully multi-sampled from a very important piece of synthesizer history, the Waldorf microwave. Back in the 80s, a guy called Wolfgang Palm developed wavetable synthesis, which is the same technology that you now see in modern synthesizers like Massive and Serum. But his wavetables were running off early digital chips and then fed through analog filters, and it's got a completely unique sound. It's incredibly thick and powerful, so perfect for this kind of production. And you can really hear the analog filter bite into those digital waveforms here on this modulated string patch. There's quite a few old school flavoured patches within this actual pack, so let me solo all of this MIDI information for the main breakdown and show you what this particular project is capable of. background of this, there's this kind of weird little tropical bird sample. Now, I've been after that ever since I heard it on some old school house records and finally found it whilst we were actually putting this pack together. It's not actually a tropical bird, it's a North American loon, which is quite ironic because most of the loons I know are from Manchester. One of the patch highlights for me has to be this really squelchy 303 bass line sampled from a Bassbot 303 clone and heavily processed through hardware on the way in. It's actually set to legato mode, so if you play around on the ESX24 with the glide parameter, you can get some real... That's it for this walkthrough of the first tracks release from F9 Audio. We've only covered about 2/3 of the actual content within the pack, so don't forget to check out the audio demos and see what else is in there. Here at F9, we're always looking for new ways to deliver you the perfect set of tools to start your next production. So please keep in contact with us and let us know how you get on with these. Also, don't forget to let us know over the F9 social media if you do make something huge with these. We'll see you next time.